My name is Nicola Josephs, and I'm a Senior Director at CEB, who is now Gartner. For those of you who don't know who CEB are, we're a research and best practice advisory company. What that means is we identify challenges that big corporate organisations have, and then our research team spend a year going, well, how do we overcome this? So that's what our team does, and quite delightedly, last year it was all around creating careers. So that's why I've been invited here to talk about that in your opportunities to work. Now, fear not, I'm not going to spend an hour taking you through research. I don't think that will be fun. But I will share some of our findings, but also help you think around what you can do in terms of building your career here and sort of more broadly in the rest of your life. So maybe I'll just start with just a quick question for the audience, and feel free to shout out, what did you want to be when you were 9 years old? What was your dream job? What was your dream job when you were 9 years old? Footballer?
Pilot.
Pilot, okay, that's a good one. Nobody else wanted to do anything when they were 9 years old by the looks of it. What was that?
Astronaut.
Astronaut, okay, I thought I was going to be a doctor. But, you know, so now think about where you are today. How, you know, maybe some of those skills might be similar, might be different. But the point is that actually in the last 5, 10, 20 years, there are roles that exist today that didn't exist when you were 9 years old. And there are roles that existed when you were 9 years old that don't exist today because the environment is changing, careers are changing. And that makes it a challenge for us to think around, well, what do we have to grow? What do we have to do to keep pace with the speed at which things are changing? So start with a quick question, and it doesn't actually have to say at Tesco's, but you know, what's hard about growing your career? What do you think employees generally anywhere in any organisation find is hard about growing careers today? What's hard?
Maybe a lack of structure, a clear roadmap to see kind of where you're heading, what are the key steps you need to take.
So there isn't a clear direction anymore? No clear direction?
Well, the skills that you need to get to those different roles, how to grow those skills so that you could succeed in getting that job.
They're not clear either. So we don't know what experiences, what capabilities we need. I guess if the roles are changing so quickly, maybe those skills and those capabilities change, so that makes it unclear. Yeah? So the point is that there is quite a challenge in terms of growing our careers when the environment is changing. We know from our research, and organisations know, that actually the top driver of attrition of employees is lack of future career opportunities. And when the organisation is changing rapidly, if we're redesigning, we're restructuring, we're stripping layers out, there's no longer a clear direction, the strategy of the organisation is changing, so what skills and what capabilities I need might change. That means that if organisations are changing, careers are changing, so the way in which we manage careers is going to have to change as well, and how we think about managing our own career too. So we have to move away from thinking around a promotions-based career to what we would determine to be a growth-based career. So what does that mean? Well, a promotion-based career is over on the left-hand side. So that's all about moving up, right? So that sort of traditional career ladder. So traditionally, that would be, a move would be fueled by a vacancy. We're going to take sequential ladder up the organisation, very little cross-functional or cross-silo movement. When we think about a growth-based career, that's more around the build. So how do I build the capabilities and the experiences I need to get on in the organisation? And that can be fueled by many types of moves, both lateral and vertical, with cross-silo, cross-functional movement, because it's all about building the capability I need. It's not about a series of simple promotions. So if that is the difference between a promotion-based and a growth-based career, what are organisations doing that we need to change? So a lot of organisations are publishing career paths. So what are the steps I need to take? And also they're publishing success stories of people in the organisation who have made it to the top. Kind of sort of inspirational, be like me, make it to the top of the organisation if you do it like that. But increasingly that's actually quite unhelpful, because if things are changing so quickly, is that realistic anymore? And we found that over on the left-hand side, it's probably easier if I explain it, but over on the left-hand side, we found that most organizations felt that their approach to managing careers was too inflexible. It wasn't able to change as quickly as the organization was changing or careers were changing in the organization. So over on the right-hand side, employees were finding it pretty unhelpful because I don't know what I need to do to get on in the workplace. And that's why we fundamentally have to shift the way we think around careers from promotion-based to growth-based. So we move away from thinking purely about positions, so what positions do I want to take, to what experiences I need to build. So traditionally, we see on the left-hand side that we build our career around position. So what position leads to what next position, which leads to what next position, and so on. So it's all about the destination, right? And there's an implicit promise of ongoing promotions. When we think about building our careers around experiences, it's thinking about what are the capabilities I need and where might I be able to get that? And it might not necessarily even be in a role. It could be in a role, it could be in a lateral role, it could be completely outside of a role. But what that enables us to do is think around what are the experiences and capabilities I need. So it's as much about the path as it is the destination. So we wanted to take a step back and say, well, okay, what does this really look like? How can I make this work if I want to start shifting the way I think about my career and how I grow it, and thinking more around experiences than simply a sequential set of positions? And so we found a lovely example from National Grid, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. So what they did was they decided to think around the way in which I can grow my careers. Rather than that sort of two-dimensional ladder, they talk around career maps. So there are two things I'm going to talk about, and they're pulled out over on the right-hand side. So how they work back from a critical role, or it could be your aspiration, where do you want to be? So they start with the end in mind, so it is a position, but they say, where do I want to be? What's my aspiration? And then thinking around what are the experiences that are going to get me there, that can be lateral roles, they could be vertical roles, but they could be things completely outside of a role itself. So let's have a look at those two components in a little bit more detail. So this example here is their asset strategy and investment program manager. That's not my aspiration, but you know, you replace that with your aspiration, even if it's an astronaut. No, you replace that with your aspiration. So they have a role in mind, an aspiration, a critical role in mind. And then they say, what are all of the experiences that will build the capabilities I need to get to that role? So you can see that in the middle there, it's not roles per se or specific positions, it's the type of place that they can get the experience they need to be an asset strategy and investment program manager. So they need an external facing role, they need a regulatory or finance role. So it's thinking about it from an experience perspective rather than I just need a sequential series of promotions. And then with that, they map it all the way back to an entry-level position. So you'd map that back to where you are today. And then they create a map where you have to have bionic eyesight. No. So this bionic eyesight map is basically saying, so what are the capabilities that I need to build? Now it is about roles. So where might I get these? But it's not just one role. There are multiple places you might get the ability to build relationships, resource management, operations, program management. So that we're now not just siloing it down to one specific role I'm going to go to. Where can I get that? What type of roles will give me that? But also, how else might you develop it? So like I said, it might not even be in a role. It could be a project role. It could be presenting, so around governance and control, presenting to a governance group. So it's now broadening the way in which I can get the experiences I need to take on a particular role. I was talking to, I was doing a presentation to a group of talent management executives, particularly in this case around high potentials and succession management. And I asked the question, I said, a lot of organizations, they spend a lot of time thinking about their succession plans and their high potentials, you know, putting high potentials through a great program and so on. And then when a vacancy appears in the organization, they don't always take people from the high-po pool. What's going on? And the main reason that is given is because they don't have the context-specific capabilities to do that particular role. They are brilliant, they've got leadership capability, they're network performers, they've got great learning agility, but they don't have the context-specific capability for that role. What this is enabling you to do is like, what are the experiences and capabilities I need for my destination role, and what is my path going to be there, my varied experiences, in order to ensure that I have those capabilities. So I think it's a really nice way to move away from just thinking about a series of promotions to what are the experiences I need, and then where might I get that outside of just simply following that linear trajectory. So are there any questions around what National Grid did there? Because if not, I'm going to ask you a question, which is, where would you start in identifying the experiences you need to advance your career? What are some of the sort of maybe quick wins that you could do if you left the office and you have a spare hour on Friday the 13th?
Check the job spec of the job you want. So
Yep.
then tick off the requirements.
So understand what the capabilities are from the job spec, so you can begin to think around what some of those experiences would be. Yep, so have a look at the job spec.
And speak to somebody doing that role.
Exactly.
See what they've done.
So what are the key experiences that have led them to be successful in your desired, your aspirational role? So there's some really nice things that you can do, and quite simple, to say, if I want to take on a particular role, and I know that I need to get there through a series of experiences, let me understand what those capabilities are and where can I get those experiences. And you can draw yourself, you know, a little map yourself to say, well, where are all of the opportunities that I could begin to develop these experiences? So that's the first thing, thinking around how can I step away from just that sort of linear focus on promotions to growing the capabilities. Yeah.
I've got just a question.
Sure.
You've shown the example from National Grid. Is there like a framework available for us to personally build our own?
There is indeed. There is indeed. We can. I'll make sure. No, absolutely. I'll make sure that I send it to Phil this afternoon and then circulate it. So absolutely, because it's actually quite it is a powerful approach, and a lot of our clients like it. So we built a toolkit to enable you to do that. I will remember to do that, and if I don't, I'm sure Phil will remind me. I will remember. So that is the first thing around building the experiences. So let's then move to a slightly different tack, and another question for you. What does employability mean? What does growing employability mean? How would you define that? Again, maybe, you know, might be just one word or a sentence. What would that mean to you?
Transferable skills.
So building transferable skills, yeah. So making yourself more employable. Transferable skills.
Leadership skills.
So
Technical skills. It depends whatever the role is.
So building skills that would make you more employable both internally and externally. So we have our definition at the top of the page, which is slightly longer, but it's employability is an employee's capabilities, skills, knowledge, experiences, achievements, and personal attributes that make them more valuable internally and externally, and therefore more likely to be a success in their career. And building your own employability has great benefits, not just for yourself in terms of, you can see, it gives you great job security here or somewhere else, but also for the organisation, because we see on the left, it now gives the organisation much more flexibility and a higher quality workforce if you're building your skills and making yourself more successful. What's also very interesting over on the right-hand side, if you look at the bar chart, is the more employable you make yourself, it increases career satisfaction, and it also increases your loyalty. So you're making yourself more employable, both internally and externally, but it increases loyalty. So why do you think that is? Why do you think increasing actually your ability to be employed by more people makes you more loyal to the company where you're building your employability?
So it's because you're growing, you're aware that you're improving where you are. So there's no stagnation, and there's no reason to look externally.
Yeah. So you're growing, you're getting opportunities to grow, you're bettering yourself, That's exciting. You don't know if you move somewhere else if you still get that opportunity. You'd go somewhere that is going to leave you stagnant. So actually something like this that Tesco is doing, your opportunities to work and how to go, this is hugely valuable. I hope it's motivating, because in some way, this is what this is saying. If I can grow and increase my skills, my capability, my knowledge here, this is a fabulous opportunity. So we've seen the benefits of employability. So we're going to grow our experiences, we're going to think around how we can meet our aspirational goal, and it gives us more job security, more job satisfaction, and actually more loyalty to the organisation, who equally get some great benefits as well. So what are some of the things that we can do, though, to make that visible? So if you're getting all of those experiences, you've identified what you need, you're looking at ways in which to experience them, we have to think around making that more visible, because if you want to move, people in the organisation need to recognise the efforts that you've put in. So Dell created this very simple framework which they encourage their employees to use, and actually they encourage them to use it internally and externally. But it's also a great way for you to think around making your experiences more visible to cross-functional within Tesco as well, to think around how you can grow your career and be taken seriously in terms of where you might move. So it's just a list of things around how you would position your experiences, how you would make yourself attractive to somebody who is looking for someone to move into another role. So we're going to include this as follow-up as well, so you can think around some of the things that Dell suggested their employees employ to make their experiences more visible. But the other thing that I've included here, which is something else that you can just do maybe 10 minutes at your desk as well, is think around questions to uncover those aspirations, those passions, and where you want to go. So the first section there around discovering strengths and preferences. So as you're thinking about moving, what are you passionate about? What do you want to grow? What are the experiences that you want to gain? So if you're trying to think around that aspirational position and begin to create your career maps, what are the things that really excite you? And then equally at the bottom, thinking around your aspirations, your future, where might that take you? And these are really practical questions to ask yourself as you're thinking about ensuring that you're growing your career and you're not stagnating in a role. So what are some of the things to challenge yourself in terms of where you might see yourself in the future? So another important thing that you need to do is arm yourself to have conversations with your manager about having a growth-based career. Tesco have put this week on. There is thought around how you can grow your career. You've had many conversations over the week. I don't know how many others you were able to join, but whether it's around diversity in leadership, whether it's around the request for mentors and so on, there's a great opportunity to get on. But actually, we need to be able to have conversations with our managers who at the end of the day might be able to facilitate some of the opportunities or open some of the doors. So I guess what are some of the things you can do to arm yourself to have those conversations with your manager?
I think it's being clear about what they can help you with.
Yep. So being clear around what they can help you with. So having a specific ask in terms of where they might be able to open some of the doors.
Yeah.
Probably equally important having an honest conversation if they can't necessarily do that.
Yep, having a very honest conversation about what they can and they can't do.
Being quite clear on where you want to get to.
Yeah, being clear on where you want to get to. I mean, I don't know how many of you here are managers, but I am very honest with my direct reports around what I can do and where they might be able to go. And in fact, my most recent direct report, my advice was to take a job externally, because what he wanted, he couldn't get in his current role, and there were great opportunities externally. But we have left the door open for him to come back when he's had that opportunity. So I think it's about having honest conversations around what you need, what you want, where you want to go, and what that manager might be able to provide for you. But as much as we like to think, or maybe managers like to believe, we're not mind readers, and they're not mind readers. So we do have to make sure that if we have that aspiration, we've identified the experiences that we need to grow and succeed. Maybe they've got some great ideas around how that might look and what they can offer to us. So I'm going to take us to a final slide, and then I'll open it up for questions. But I would love for you to just take a moment to think yourself. I'm not going to ask for answers to the first question, but what you feel might get in the way of moving to a growth-based career at Tesco. So what are some of the things that might be your barriers, your personal barriers? And then maybe just have a think, talk to your neighbour around some of the things that you can do walking away from this week to take more of a growth-based approach to your career. And then I will ask for a couple of ideas. But take a few minutes, maybe just with your neighbour in twos or threes, just to have a quick discussion around some of the barriers and some of the actions that you might take. And then I'd love to hear some ideas from the room. So, who would like to volunteer to share a little bit around what you discussed in your twos or threes around what you could do next week, back at your desk this afternoon, in terms of taking sort of more of a growth-based approach to your career?
We talked about knowledge of where you can find the skills being readily available. So I think we're on the right path to developing like skills frameworks and sharing the knowledge of within each kind of function and cross-functionally, where can you develop skills, what are the roles, and where do you get that? I think we're just not there yet. The information isn't fully readily available and easy to access yet. So I think that gets in the way slightly, but I think it's being worked on.
So did you discuss what you could do while that's being worked on? So some of the things you said in terms of...
Yeah, exactly. So actually, if the information is not there in front of you, easily accessed on our Tesco or something, just go and find out. Go and research it yourself, talk to people, see what other companies are doing, or your people that you know outside as well, and try and get hold of some information and knowledge yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a great example is, let's say arbitrarily someone from comms wanted to move to HR or vice versa, and maybe for some reason it's difficult to get a comms job spec on Tesco. You could probably get a comms job spec on the internet quite easily, so you'd be able to see what those experiences are, check what you've got and check what you don't, and where you might be able to get that. That's a nice idea. Anybody else like to volunteer what you discussed in your group?
Yeah, we were saying it's as simple as just the day job getting in the way as the biggest blocker.
Right,
so we were talking around planning and organisation and setting specific time aside to have those conversations, rather than just sitting down and getting straight into the nitty-gritty of delivering numbers, because everyone's so busy with the growth of technology and just being switched on the whole time. So yeah, it's being strict with yourself and prioritising it. Yeah.
So I know a lot of people who will put a calendar invite that is like a meeting, even book a room, so that they're not at their desk. They might take their computer because they've got to do some research or so on, but they've actually dedicated a specific time slot to do it. It's the same as going to the gym. You just have to find the time.
Well, we were discussing maybe not where you want to go sort of ultimately, but if you know you need to get skills to get to that place and you're moving around, how do you necessarily get the skills to move to that sort of lateral role instead? And it might be a case of trying to find out, I guess, how, if you can't get those within your current role because it's not similar to that role that you're trying to move to, then you might need to look at something external, some sort of training, something along those lines to get there instead.
Yeah, and then it's a bit like if we come back to all the way back to National Grid, where we're thinking, where else might you be able to get these things? So it could be in a project role if there's an opportunity to volunteer to do something like that, or it could be externally to try and get some of those experiences so you can move, absolutely. Yeah. Well, one last idea from someone. There we go.
Yeah, we spoke about in terms of exposure to other roles and trying to understand what roles are potentially available, or and how you get to find out about different things that you might actually want to actually do, and then with that is then trying to broaden your network in terms of to try and understand and speak to other people and come out of silos really and see what is available and speak to people about other roles.
Absolutely, and something I mentioned to Phil whilst we were setting up, and something I've seen work in other organisations, and you can take it upon yourself to do a small version of it, is you can identify a handful of people who are interested in learning more cross-functionally, your peers, but in a different part of the business, and run a mini speed dating. Right? I've seen organisations do, a quick mini speed dating, like tell me a little bit more around what type of roles exist there, what type of experiences, what type of people come in and come out. Do you have people with all similar, or is it very strange that, I mean, it's not unusual, but I work with heads of HR. I've got people who have come through the HR ranks. A lot of heads of HR are ex-finance people, ex-engineers, people from the business. So, a mini speed dating event will give you an opportunity to just spend, 10 minutes learning about maybe 6 different functions, and that's an hour of your time. So there are little ways of doing exactly that. How can I learn more around other parts of the business and the transferable skills? And what's interesting, you mentioned sort of technology and things growing. These days, the skills that span across functions aren't so discrete anymore. You have to have sort of strategic thinking in all parts of it. You have to have a degree of technology, probably in a lot of silos. So what are the sort of cross-functional skills that might give you a step in as a start, and then you need to think around what are some of the other experiences I need to take on these lateral roles? Well, thank you. I will pause there. Are there any questions that you have for me, either about the research or any ideas or things that I can contribute to you in our remaining minutes? Yeah.
Sure. So I've got this career path, and everything assumes you know where you want to go. What's your end goal? If you don't know what your end goal is, how can you actually know what activities, what can allow you to know more where to go, basically?
Yeah. So that's part of the reason that I put these questions in here as well. So these are some nice, interesting questions to ask yourself, in your past experience, your project role, what you've done, what have you enjoyed? What would you prefer not to do again, right? If you could do more of something, what could it be? In terms of exploring the future, if you could create your ideal role, what would it be? So absolutely, with the amount of change that is happening, we don't know the roles that are going to appear in the future. I mean, a decade ago, how many organizations had a head of D&I, head of talent management, head of e-commerce? They didn't exist. But by asking yourself some of these questions to uncover your passion, your preferences, your definite no's, then you can start thinking around how can I extrapolate that into growing more experiences that will then open some doors. Absolutely. If you don't know where you're going to go, you have to ask yourself some questions around what are the things that you enjoy and where might you build them. So thank you very much for inviting me. I hope that you've had a fantastic week. I think it's great what has been set up for you, and really I think there are some great opportunities out there for you to take, and make sure that this is shared with you, and equally the toolkit from that we built off the back of the case from National Grid. Thank you very much.